Hello, my name is Paweł, and today we're going to talk about Agile recruitment. Let's begin with a story. We used to have a phase in our recruitment process where a candidate was performing live coding in front of a camera during a video call. The one candidate that I remember copied the task over to another screen, then spent 12 minutes sitting in front of a computer doing nothing but looking at the other screen. When finally, after 12 minutes, he copied over the solution back to the screen where he was supposed to deliver it, and he said he was done. We even wanted to pay a referral fee to him for getting us in touch with the candidate, which really solved the task. But unfortunately, the code was wrong, and we couldn't do that. This is not the only occurrence of fraud that we will be dealing with today. So we'll get to that later. But for now, let's think, how can we apply Agile in recruitment? Everyone knows plan, do, check, act, but recruitment is like a stream. You constantly have new candidates applying, and each candidate is different than the other. So how do you do it? I didn't know how to do it. I thought it was impossible, but then I got the idea. It's really quite simple. Okay. Why is it worth the effort? So you will have more applicants to focus on it. We had 228% more per quarter. That's a lot. We reduced false negative results during the analysis, and we've reduced the cost of the process by at least 3/4. Then we finally automated fraud detection. It's a big thing. Okay, so how do we actually do it? You split the recruitment endless process into phases. It can be monthly, it can be quarterly. I split it for like 100 to 120 candidates. And then I do the analysis and I open up the new phase where I apply the learnings from the previous phase. And then in a month or 2 months later, I just see how it worked. And I do this continuously every month or every 2 months, depending on how many candidates apply. You need to collect data. Otherwise, there will be no analysis. You can do this in just a few minutes. This is an idea of a spreadsheet. It's almost identical to what we used to have. Would in the first column put the name of the candidate. In the second and further columns, put the data that you collect from the stages and sub-stages. The more data you have, the easier it is to analyze it. An example learning. How many developers are needed to change 2 first rows in a spreadsheet? So let's make it easy. Spreadsheets may be difficult. They have those sub-sheets in tabs usually. There's formatting, whatever, text areas. Let's make it a CSV, okay? One of the simplest formats you can imagine. How many senior developers on average are needed to change 2 rows? Okay, split the first, replace the first one with the second one in the other, and in the other direction. It's very small program. Should take just like 3 or 4 minutes to write. Apparently, on a test run on about 500 engineers, which applied to us as senior Python developers, each of them having at least 4 years of experience, 1 in 8 was able to do it properly. That's a problem. We have to find the right ones, and we have to do it cost effectively. In the first version of the recruitment process, which we call V0 for some reason, engineers like to start arrays with zeros. We had an applicant sending their CV or their email address or whatever, and then we had a virtual assistant. We checked the experience of the person, whether they had at least 4 years of experience or not. We put a limit on 4 years because nobody who had 5 years or less ever went through the process. There are many candidates that have 1 or 2 years of experience and they are applying to senior position. So this is filtering quite a lot of people. Next, we either say goodbye to the candidate, explain that that's not going to work, or we gave them a mini project, which was a home assignment. Takes a few hours to do. Some people it takes many more hours. Some people do it in an hour and a half. What this project requires a little bit of design work and overall shows the capability of the engineer quite well. There is just one problem with this. It costs about 40 minutes of an engineer's work to review this and to give feedback to the candidate. And we do give feedback to everyone. Maybe the feedback costs real money, but it's the right thing to do. After the mini project, if the candidate qualifies, we put him on a trial period, work with him for a while. If both sides like the cooperation, then we say it's no longer a trial period, we continue working. The essential thing here is that if the candidate reaches the trial period, we start paying him for his time. If the wrong candidate reaches the trial period, that's a lot of money. Not in terms of the candidate himself, but we spend a lot of time with the candidate as well. In the first version 1, we added one more step. I mentioned it earlier during the discussion about fraud. There was live coding using a Google Doc, because why not? I was introduced to Microsoft once and they used the Google Docs, so I thought maybe I can as well. Virtual assistant was meeting with the candidate, asking whether he speaks English properly or not, which by the way was very bad. They mentioned to judge people on, because after some analysis, we found out that we are not rejecting people because they don't properly speak English. Maybe like 2% of the candidates could be rejected based on that. And it's not important because they would fail in the later phases of the process anyway. So we just skip that test. We're not asking people if they can speak English anymore. Okay, so live coding. The problem with live coding was that it actually did filter quite a lot of people out, but it was stressful to the candidate. If someone is watching you code, you make many more mistakes. It's difficult to focus. And we thought we are failing many candidates, not because they are bad engineers, but because they cannot properly show off their skills in a stressful situation. And this is not a good test, because usually people where they are working with us, they are not working in a stressful situation. So we were kind of cutting off the engineers who were performing well in normal situation, but not well in a stressful situation. And that's a loss. We didn't want that. Basic test of live coding has eliminated 82% of the candidates at that stage. So, okay, so this is the resulting table of the analysis. There's only one row for now. Experience check has removed 81% of the candidates. Most of the candidates were just not having 4 years of experience or more applying to the senior position. We rejected them early on. Okay. The check was manual. The assistant was looking at a LinkedIn profile or something, asking the person over email how many years of experience they have if we didn't have the LinkedIn profile, and so on. Basic tasks took half an hour of the virtual assistant, and it also filtered 82%. It is difficult to say whether this was a good test or not. We tried some, I think 5 different tasks. We ran some statistics on them, but the results were inconclusive. In version 1, there is no debug task. I will introduce it later. And the mini project rejected 85% of the candidates who approached it. In version 2, we have replaced live coding with a big testing platform. So this was something that we tried. We thought it will help us reduce the cost of the virtual assistant and that it will decrease the stress level because nobody will actually be watching you. There will be a timer which will say, you have an hour and a half to do the test. But it was more than enough time. Half an hour was enough to finish it. And it was a little bit better. But the data that this platform gave us was not fine-grained enough for us to properly evaluate the candidate. It's changed something. Experience check has given different results. I think between version 1 and version 2, we've actually reduced the requirement from 5 years to 4 years. So less people were being rejected by the assistant, and then the basic test rejected way less people because they were less stressed and the test was more permissive. You could make a mistake or 2 mistakes. There were 5 tasks. You only had to solve 3 of them correctly. Many people went into the mini project and it cost us a lot of money to verify it. But the rejection rate on mini project was pretty much the same, and so many candidates went into the trial period. We've done some hypotheses. We investigated the results of the tests, and we figured out, for example, that giving people more time to solve the tasks wouldn't change anything. We found all the candidates that would pass the test if we gave them more time and we analyzed their code manually. That would not be a great success. I think to the one candidate, we actually emailed them and said that our criteria has changed and we would pass him, and he was also rejected on the next stage. So we've kind of did an iteration that was artificial. We didn't actually take more candidates on, but we've analyzed the data and realized that modifying the criteria in such a way would not yield a positive result. This has let us, it made our iterations faster because we didn't always have to change something and then wait a month or 2 months to see whether it would work or not. We could do this theoretically and base our decision on the analysis. The second platform that we used was EvalGround. It's a very small platform and it's dirt cheap, costs $2 or $3 per test. If someone says that I cannot use proper automation and analysis and whatever, this platform is super cheap. You don't need a significant budget for it. They have a free trial and they are super cheap anyway. And I talked to them. I said that I'm going to mention it on the conference because how well they performed for us. And they even gave us a discount code. So if you'd like to try it on, I would recommend it sincerely. One special thing about them is that they are small. There were some issues with their interface, some issues with their platform. I raised those problems with their support. I requested the changes to be done. And they are agile. Unlike the other platform that said that they will do a change for us to collect more data, they actually had the data. They didn't send it in the reports. And they said, yes, in 3 months we will do it. And they didn't. AgileByExample did every major change that we have requested. And our tests got way better because of it. And I really have to recommend working with small vendors that they have to adjust. They have to follow the user. Okay, anyway, we have this new platform. We start using it. We changed the tests somewhat because we realized 2 of the tests were too easy and they didn't actually reject anyone. Okay? So we did the check on paper and we've seen that if we remove this test or we gave everyone a pass on that particular task, it wouldn't matter. Those candidates would still pass regardless of whether this task was present or not. So we actually haven't been using the results of this test as well as we should have, so we removed it and replaced it with another. AgileByExample has let us automate the thing fully. So now the assistant was copy-pasting the values from their interface into a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was creating feedback messages based on the results of the candidate, and that was being sent over to the candidate as a response if we had to say goodbye or we've invited the candidate to the next stage. The experience check was still manual, so that took some time. And let's see how this works in numbers. Okay, trolling. Yes, this was another thing that we've discovered. So what's this new step? Well, and why is it pointing to itself? Well, some people can't take no for an answer. So the way it looks is on Monday, a candidate applies, they try to do the test, and then we reject them. We say, okay, thank you, goodbye, it doesn't work. Another candidate under a similar name applies the next day and submits a solution that is almost identical to the first one. And so they use multiple iterations to fix this. There are 2 types of fraud this way. One is people sharing solutions within a group, and another one that we can distinguish because of timing is when one person is applying and goes through the recruitment process until they are failed, and on the next morning they apply again after a different name, sometimes 3-4 times. So what we did is, when we detect them, we run them through all of our automated steps, and then we put them in a step which is designed to run out their resources. And we take no time to verify this, but they need to spend significant amount of time to keep being involved in that process. And they eventually starve and they stop responding to our emails and they go away. Let's look at the example of what they submitted. So this is a first snippet of code. Please note the spaces or the lack of them near the equal signs where the variables are assigned. And this is the second version, submitted a few days later. Okay. Once again, version 1, version 2. It's the exact same code. Now, we rejected that one as well on a later stage, and this is what we got. This is also almost identical. The name of one of the variable is changed. Maybe two variables. Again, version 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is how version 3 looks like in the end. Fraud detection is not easy. We needed to write a piece of software that actually helped us do it. Grants does contain some fraud detection, admittedly, but our needs were more specific, so we used the API. Okay, so what happened here? Experience check has removed less candidates than previously. Why? Because in the process of doing all this, we've also iterated on the job ad. We've increased the compensation. We've improved the way it sells the position. We put quite a lot of work to it to attract better candidates. And so candidates with more experienced candidates started to apply than before. And we can see this on the first column. Now, basic tasks started to reject more people. Why? Because the first, the task number 1 and number 4 were too easy, and we've changed them to more difficult tasks. So less candidates were able to solve those. Those were all super basic things that a proficient junior engineer should be able to solve. We still accepted 2 failures, but somehow in that iteration, that particular iteration, mini project rejected all of the candidates. Yeah, that was the change in the job ad, and that was the change in the description of the tests. Version 4. In version 4, we've changed the criteria for the small tests again, after analyzing the results. We've made it even more strict. I think we tolerated less failures, and we've added more tests because some candidates were able to deliver solutions which passed the test, but were actually not really solving the problem that we gave them. So we hardened it. And then we introduced a new step, which was a debug task. It's very hard and fully automated. It took us a lot of time to prepare it, but it properly detects whether someone is a senior or not, and it does so in a fully automated way. One thing it doesn't check is how fast an engineer is. So we rely on the mini project to do that. And that's how the numbers look. Experience check stayed the same because the job ad stayed basically the same. Basic test rejects roughly the same amount of people as previously. The mini project kind of detected many people who were high quality, but were not fast enough when solving these kind of problems for us. And so finally, version 5. You can see that the virtual assistant verifying the experience level of the candidate has been replaced with a robot. So why didn't we do this earlier? Grants has implemented a new feature for us. We've requested it and they actually delivered it. Whereas you can disqualify someone from the test for free, by the way. They don't charge you anything. And when you do, there is a message. This message was, you are disqualified. And this was not the way we wanted to communicate with our candidates. They implemented a new feature. Now you can customize this message. We wrote a very nice message that explained what happened and started using that. It saves about 10 hours of work per month. We've also changed the criteria for the programming tasks. We previously tolerated people who did two of the tasks too slowly or improperly, so the solution was not correct. We are now not tolerating any failures in terms of functionality. Either someone properly solves the task because they now get full feedback, no hidden tests this time, or they don't. Someone can be a little bit slow on one or two tasks. We don't measure the time. We only have the total in an hour, where half an hour is just enough. And this has also changed the numbers. So now the experience check is automated, so it doesn't filter anyone at that first stage. Experience check and basic tasks in total remove 93% of the people. Debug test only removes 13%. Why? We implemented the debug test in version 4 where it was permissible to fail a threading task. And threading task is correlated with the debug task. So people who were failing partially the basic test were later filtered out by the debug task in version 4. I don't have the number on it, unfortunately. And now it seems that they are being filtered on the basic test because there are no failures tolerated whatsoever on that stage. Recruitment is really important. You cannot leave it to an HR person. The thing that I've shown you, HR needs support, okay? They are not experts in Agile, in adjustment, in continuous analysis, and figuring out how and what to improve. But you can help them. Recruitment is an important problem for everyone. If you don't have a proper process, your engineers are going to spend a lot of time on interviews. That's probably not going to make them super happy. If you don't invest in automation, your company is going to pay a lot of money for silly work such as checking how many years of experience someone has. But if you know what the tools are and it seems to be just a spreadsheet or a cheap platform, then it is possible. Finally, respectful communication. We've had many problems with candidates who were not happy with the results of their interview. We used to say that we measured them on our scale, and someone for the purposes of our very specific narrow band of work is either a junior, intermediate, or senior. But if an engineer had 10 years of experience and they performed terribly in a task, and we wrote them that their requirements understanding was at the junior level, they expressed their unhappiness in an email. And later on, we started saying that we don't measure how good engineers they are, but the test gives us a perspective on a very narrow band of what we are currently trying to measure, which means nothing for the overall skill of that engineer. But we have to use something for the recruitment. And it's basically the same process, but the number of unhappy people has decreased severely. We've improved our communication quite a lot, and I think it is worth it to check how this is done and to try to improve it. I'm not showing the results of what is happening in this area because we've done so many changes that going through all of them would take a lot of time. You have to look at your job ad. All right. That's all for me. Thank you. If you would like to talk with me, there's a break. And I think the platform has, the conference platform has some way for us to talk. And I'm happy to discuss this talk with you. See ya.
Thank you very much, Paweł. Really interesting to see how you went through different processes and different iterations in your process. We have a question from the audience. Can you put all versions on the timeline? How long it took to iterate from one version to another?
We have changed the iteration every 100 or so candidates that reached the basic test, except for the iteration 0, of course. And that was 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how many candidates applied.
Thank you very much, Paweł. And last question, as we are finishing to the end of this segment, how many candidates do you need to check before finding the right candidate?
Our requirements are very strict. It's currently about 1,400 candidates per successful hire.
1,400 per successful hire?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a super large number of candidates.
There are many incompetent candidates applying for remote positions. Like you have seen, 80% of them just apply without sufficient experience.
Okay, I see. Very interesting. Then I understand now how your process needed to evolve in order to find the right candidates. Thank you very much, Paweł.